This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
African leaders push for better representation on the global stage as the AU summit begins in Addis Ababa. Madagascans seek refuge in emergency shelters as cyclone Batsirai makes landfall. And rescuers in Morocco are within reach of a boy trapped in a well for 5 days. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. Coming up in your sports, Tanzanians joined celebrations to mark the start of the Beijing 2022 Winter Games in China. The 35th African Union Heads of State Assembly kicked off Saturday in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa with a call for greater representation of the African continent in the UN Security Council. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says Africa should have at least 2 permanent seats in the council. At the assembly, Senegalese President Macky Sall took over the position of African Union Chair from his predecessor, DRC President Felix Tshisekedi. Macky Sall takes over the post at a time when the continent is battling the COVID pandemic and a spate of coups in West Africa. Well, the African Union has called for an end to conflicts in Africa. It is urging countries to focus their efforts on development, the fight against COVID-19 and climate change. The call comes as the continent struggles to deal with insecurity in different countries and the instability caused by recent coups in West Africa. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy reports.
African heads of state are in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa to discuss issues affecting the continent. This year's AU summit comes as Africa reels from a spate of military coups and the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. 4 African countries have been suspended by the AU for what the body calls unconstitutional change of government.
It's a threat to democracy, to social stability and political inclusion. We need to address this and find ways of avoiding further deterioration of peace and stability conditions on the continent.
The summit is expected to discuss and come up with solutions to challenges that give rise to coups in Africa. The resurgence of coups has alarmed Africa's governing body, representing what many here say is a threat to peace, security and stability of the African continent.
Africa needs to silence the guns because guns are the source of all these 280 million people suffering.
Malawi and Zambia have called for concerted efforts to address instability across the continent and the implementation of clear-cut policies to lift Africans out of poverty.
Instability anywhere is a threat to stability everywhere. That is a view we hold very, very strongly. And I shall repeat that held view. Instability anywhere is a threat to stability everywhere.
We do need an environment in which guns have been silenced and there is peace and security across the continent, with the rule of law being followed, democracy being consolidated, development being championed, and then the African people's dignity being upheld.
For now, analysts say restoring peace in the most affected parts of Africa remains a huge challenge, especially in countries recently affected by military coups. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says cooperation between the African Union and the United Nations is stronger than ever. In a video message addressing the 35th African Union Assembly, Guterres welcomed the AU leadership in establishing the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Force and other mechanisms that have resulted in over 34 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine being procured globally for the continent. Guterres also says the UN and AU must come together to ensure there are adequate vaccines for everyone in Africa.
Nous devons propulser les vaccins et la vaccination.
We must propel vaccines and vaccination for all. I salute your leadership in establishing the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Force, AVAT, and other mechanisms that have resulted in over.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping on Saturday also sent a message to the 35th African Union Summit. President Xi expressed warm congratulations and wishes to African countries and people. President Xi also said China is ready to work with African nations to actively implement the outcomes of the 8th conference of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, also known as FOCAC. China is willing to further synergize the Belt and Road Cooperation and the Global Development Initiative with the African Union's Agenda 2063 and the construction of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The 35th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly ends on a Sunday. The Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa is hosting one of the continent's biggest gatherings this weekend. And as CGTN's Gerum Chala tells us, Addis Ababa has been more than ready to host this summit in style.
We are now at Ethiopia's biggest square, Muscat Square. This is where some of the nation's biggest political, social, and even religious events have taken place. And thanks to recent refurbishment work done, Muscat Square is now among the best in the world. As you can see, this square is embellished by flags of all 54 member states of the African Union. And this is in preparation for the 35th Assembly of the Union. Everywhere you go across the city and in every square inch of it, it's easy to spot something that shows the AU summit is underway. Flags, banners, and all. Addis Ababa has been hosting AU summits since the inception of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, in the early 1950s. And it's a city with a lot of history, both in terms of organizing such huge events, as well as serving as a symbol of African unity and progress. Despite the claims of insecurity by some, Addis Ababa is now secure, peaceful, and ready to host yet another Heads of State summit. Group Data CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Mali's interim president, Assimi Goita, has asked lawmakers to review the transitional charter that is due to expire this month. The country could set a new date for elections after the upcoming council session. Last month, the military decided not to implement a plan for elections in February, which triggered EU sanctions on a number of Mali's leaders, including the Prime Minister Choguel Maiga. The sanctions include travel bans and asset freezes. Maiga was named as Prime Minister of the transitional government last June, just days after a second coup took place. Residents of Antananarivo have taken refuge in emergency shelters as Madagascar braces itself for tropical cyclone Batsirai. There are fears the storm could deliver another ravaging blow to the island nation. Madagascar is still reeling from last month's cyclone Anna that left at least 58 people dead. The storm is said to be more powerful than Anna, with heavy rainfall and winds of up to 200 kilometers an hour.
Cyclone Batsirai seems very strong compared to the others. It is cold and it rains. We cannot leave this place. We are stuck here. We are stuck here because we cannot bring our children outside because it is cold and we are afraid of landslides. It is better for us to be cautious and to stay here.
A group of lawmakers from the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo is calling on their government to authorize troops from neighboring Uganda to help their army fight against militiamen in Ituri province. Their call comes in the wake of an attack at a camp for internally displaced people that left more than 60 civilians dead and several others injured in Djugu territory. CGTN caught up with the head of the parliamentary group in the DRC's capital, Kinshasa.
Nous sommes choqués. Nous sommes We are very shocked by the recent killings in Ituri province. We just do not understand what is going on. We are requesting President Felix Tshisekedi to reconsider his decision regarding the appointment of the commanders handling the military operation against armed groups there. Nothing has changed since they took charge last year. We propose that our government authorizes troops from neighboring Uganda to help our army to get rid of the rebels in our territory.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Rescuers in Morocco inch closer to a boy trapped in a well for 5 days. And more than 20,000 refugees flee clashes in northwestern Ethiopia.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The little tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Gas. So it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
Rescuers in Morocco are engaging in a delicate and dangerous operation trying to save a young boy trapped in a well. 5-year-old Rayan Oram has been trapped in the well for 5 days in the northern part of the country. He fell into the 32-meter deep well in the hills near Chefchaouen on Tuesday. On Saturday, the rescuers said they had managed to dig up to within a meter from Rayan. State television later reported that the rescuers were 90 centimeters from Rayan and had pinpointed his location. It is not clear how the child's health condition is, but the rescuers hope he will be rescued safe and sound. The United Nations says over 20,000 Sudanese and South Sudanese have fled clashes in northwestern Ethiopia. Fighting broke out in the town of Tongo between federal forces and armed groups on January the 18th. The UNHCR spokesperson says a refugee camp near the town was looted and burnt. This was in addition to another camp being looted and torched in late December. The refugees have since fled to Asosa town. Regional authorities have identified a new temporary site which can accommodate 20,000 people. The UNHCR says it is working to get the site ready to receive the refugees.
Fighting broke out on the 18th of January in the town of Tongo, reportedly between unidentified armed groups and federal forces, and the nearby camp hosting 10,300 refugees was looted and burned. This followed the looting of another camp in the area in late December. A total of 22,000 people in both camps have been cut off from access and assistance since then. Of course, we're deeply concerned that we're not able to reach everyone at this time. We're trying to resume aid as soon as possible, but for that to happen, we need to see the humanitarian security situation, the humanitarian access and the security situation improving rapidly, and that is partially our call.
The man accused of torching South Africa's Houses of Parliament just over a month ago has been denied bail by a Cape Town court. Zandile Christmas Mafe was arrested in the precincts of Parliament on the 2nd of January, the day the old Assembly and National Assembly buildings first went up in flames. Rene Delcam has more.
Handing down her judgment in the Cape Town Regional Court, the magistrate said the accused had not satisfied the court that exceptional circumstances existed which, in the interest of justice, permitted his release. And his bail application was therefore refused. The magistrate said she had taken into consideration the personal circumstances of the 49-year-old unemployed accused who faces charges of housebreaking, arson and terrorism. She said the court had to strike a balance between the liberty of an individual and the community being safeguarded against dangerous individuals.
We are very happy that she found that balance. It was not in the interest of justice for the accused to be released on bail, and that he was a danger not only to the society but also to himself. We are happy with this outcome. It indicates also the strength of our case, which they failed to challenge at the bail application.
We accept this decision. However, there are ways, if one is not satisfied with the judgment, there are ways in which one can take the matter up, and we will approach the High Court and appeal the matter on an urgent basis.
The accused supporters are adamant that he is innocent and authorities have the wrong man behind bars. They say they'll be here at court in solidarity with him for as long as the legal process against him continues.
We are so disappointed that the court is denying the accused the bail, because if you have a fixed abode, that is what I think is needed for you to be given the bail. And he's not a danger as far as we are concerned to be denied a bail.
We are not happy. We are not happy. We don't see the reason why the magistrate didn't give him a bail.
Investigators are still analysing the accused's cell phone and testing the clothes he was arrested in for traces of petrol. He's expected to appear in court again on the 11th of February. Rena Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Landmines planted during the war in South Sudan between 1983 and 2005 still pose a threat to many in the country. That's according to the United Nations, which also says landmines are derailing agricultural development in most parts of the country. Here's CGTN's Patrick Oyet.
Mary Joseph is a 20-year-old mother of one, a resident of Juba's outskirts. Mary lost a leg after stepping on a landmine 2 years ago.
I was coming from cutting grass for roofing our hut. I was returning home, then I heard a loud sound. I don't remember a lot of things, but I found myself down. There was a lot of blood and I didn't have one of my legs.
The United Nations says 1,404 people across South Sudan have been killed by unexploded ammunition from 2004 to date. The UN says all 10 states of South Sudan have reported mine-related injuries and deaths. More than 3,700 others have been injured by the devices. Landmines continue to hinder movement, dissuade investors, and frighten returning refugees. The mining is expensive. The UN says it continues to fund agencies involved in the mining, providing mine risk education and also victim assistance. The UN estimates that 80% of the most dangerous areas are now mine-free. 96% of the roads identified as contaminated have been cleared, but the global body says more work needs to be done and it is calling for more funds.
We need for families to return to their areas where they live prior to the conflict. We need for agriculture to continue in areas where we know that we have the land, the water, and the people to be able to produce food to feed themselves and reduce food insecurity. Overall, it's about safety. It's about creating an enabling environment for people to be able to live and to thrive.
UN mine workers are detonating a number of unexploded ordnances in the country, but civilians like Mary Joseph still come across unexploded devices and the unlucky ones lose their lives. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Tunisia's health ministry says the COVID-19 pandemic is under control despite increased pressure on medical facilities due to the country's fifth wave of infections. The number of hospitalizations across the North African nation has gone up significantly since December last year. And as Adnan Chauchi tells us, frontline health workers are demanding more support, equipment and better remuneration to face the pandemic.
The General Directorate of Public Health Facilities says that most patients admitted in COVID-19 units need medical oxygen. Consequently, the occupancy rate of beds fitted with oxygen concentrators is higher than the demand for intensive care beds.
We are facing the fifth wave of the pandemic. It started in December. The health department has followed the same procedure for hospital, human resources, the availability of beds or oxygen. This system is updated continuously depending on the evolution of the number of positive cases, hospitalized patients in the ICU, or hospitalization beds.
Health authorities in Tunisia say that demand for medical oxygen is close to 77,000 liters per day, while the daily production capacity is 100,000 liters. The North African country has 600,000 liters of strategic medical oxygen reserves.
We continue to follow the evolution of the consumption of oxygen. The current situation is stable for oxygen availability. It's necessary for hospitalized patients. Medical oxygen is the first cure for the complicated cases. The crisis unit at the Health Ministry is managing the oxygen procurement. We are all on alert.
More than 50 frontline doctors have died since the outbreak of the pandemic in Tunisia in March 2020. Health professionals have delayed several strikes. However, doctors' unions at public hospitals are advocating for better working conditions.
The health authorities are pushing us to strike despite the humanitarian character of our job. Frontline medics have legitimate demands. Working amid the pandemic is risky. We deserve better conditions in Tunisia.
The Tunisian government scientific committee for the fight against the coronavirus announced that 5,000 oxygen concentrators were made available to hospitals. 6 oxygen generators are operational. 4 others are being installed. According to the Department of Public Healthcare Facilities, 4 field hospitals are now operating out of 12 to reduce pressure on public hospitals. Tunisia has recorded more than 26,500 COVID-related deaths since the outbreak of the pandemic in the country in March 2020. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And coming up in your sports news. Tanzanians join celebrations to mark the start of the 2022 Beijing Winter Games in China. And we continue our coverage of the Beijing 2022 Olympics that got underway in China on Friday. Tanzanians joined the celebrations that marked the colorful start of the Winter Games. The Chinese embassy invited officials such as the Minister for Sport and the President of the Tanzanian Paralympic Committee to witness the grand occasion. They all watched the opening ceremony of the 2022 Winter Olympic Games beamed live from Beijing. Tanzania is not sending athletes to the Games, but the event allowed participants to get into the Olympic spirit.
I wish all the best and success to the people of China who are hosting this event.
I wish them good competitions. I believe everything will go well.
And we're staying in Tanzania for the moment, where professional fighters Hassan Champiz Mwakinyo and Ibrahim King Class have been stripped of their World Boxing Federation titles due to technical reasons. Mwakinyo was stripped of the Intercontinental Super Welterweight belt, while Class lost the lightweight crown. The move means Tanzania now has no WBF title holders. CGTN's Daniel Kejo has more.
The Tanzanian boxing scene has been hit with a heavy blow. 2 of its top boxers have been stripped of their World Boxing Federation belts. Hassan Mwakinyo and Ibrahim Class were the WBF Intercontinental Super Welterweight and Intercontinental Lightweight champions, respectively. The WBF representative revealed the decision was made after the boxers opted to fight for the titles instead of defending their titles at a specific time.
If he defended both two belts, that would be okay, but leaving one belt was not proper. As you know, in the boxing world, sometimes fighters fight for even up to 3 belts. So by doing so, he went against what we had agreed. So yes, we had to strip them.
Ibrahim was stripped due to not defending his belt because he failed to get a promoter. Hassan Mwakinyo is one of Tanzania's biggest boxing stars. He represents for many a rebirth of boxing for fans in and out of the country. However, with this move, he has now dropped 5 places in the world professional boxing records. Ibrahim Class too is beloved by many, so it is hoped that this would be a wake-up call for them to take the necessary steps to return to form. Mwakinyo's management has declined to comment on the move, while Ibrahim Class told CGTN Sports that he would bounce back to attain his standard in the game after being out of the ring for months. Experts in the industry say more professionalism is needed in Tanzanian boxing.
They must take this as a lesson. They should not think it is a joking matter. This is not a joke, as this is their way to make a livelihood. The more you fight, the higher ranked you get. The less, the lower in the ranks you go. When you drop in the rankings, you make losses, and when you rise, you make profits.
The WBF says the boxers can try and get their belts back, but it would require them to fight the world's best to get them.
We would have to look at where the belt is, because it's a continental belt, so we would look at the belt holder and if the promoter can make an offer to entice the holder to fight. We would also have access if he can fight for the belt at that time, and that is the only way to make it to the belt. He must then defeat the belt holder. That's the only way.
The Tanzanian boxers are no longer on the World Boxing Federation website. With Hassan Mwakinyo not listed on the rankings, Romanian boxer Victor Inasco is a current world champion at the weight category. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
In football, English Premier League giants Chelsea suffered an FA Cup round scare. An FA Cup 4th round scare earlier this evening when they had to come from behind and needed extra time to beat League One side Plymouth Argyle 2-1. Defender Macaulay Gillespie needed the ball home from a free kick in the 8th minute to stand the Blues. Cesar Azpilicueta brought Chelsea level in the 41st minute with Mason Mount claiming the assist. The teams could not be separated until the 16th minute of extra time when Marcos Alonso swept in before goalkeeper Kefa saved a penalty from Ryan Hardy with 5 minutes to go to seal Chelsea's passage to the 5th round. Elsewhere, fellow EPL side West Ham United broke the hearts of Kidderminster Harriers as they overcame the non-league side 2-1 thanks to last gasp goals in normal and extra time in another 4th round clash. And that is it on this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen and do follow us on our digital media platform. Thank you for watching. Talk Africa is up next. Stay tuned.